I'm not going very far.
It's too uncomfortable.
I'm in a hurry. Sometimes I just forget.
There's no such thing as a good excuse for not buckling up. You're not only putting yourself at risk of injury or death, it could also cost you lots of money. Cops are writing tickets, so why take the risk? Do the smart thing and start buckling up every trip, day or night. Click it or ticket. Paid for by NHTSA.
One of the better baseball analysts in the country, the Joe Sheehan newsletter, comes out every few days, and I highly recommend it to everyone who likes the game of baseball. Joe, how are you?
Good, Marty. Good to be talking about baseball in April again. We didn't get that last year, so it's exciting.
No, especially, look, we're talking at Bay Area baseball. How about that with the A's and the Giants? How about just your reaction to where both those teams are right now?
Yeah, two of the best stories so far. The A's, of course, starting out with that ridiculously bad stretch and then ripping off 13 in a row, still in first place. I think it's a credit to Bob Melvin. We know that this is a team that doesn't spend a whole lot of money on the roster. The player development's gotten a lot better. But every year they kind of give Melvin this mishmash, certainly in the bullpen, and he puts winning teams on the field. I think probably we start talking about him as one of the best managers of the era. And, of course, the Giants, in first place. I certainly didn't think they had this in him. It's been a very good month so far, really driven by the defense as much as anything else. Been the best defensive team in baseball so far. We'll see how they navigate this stretch with a couple of innings, a couple of injuries. But I'm not saying we're going to have 1989 again, but I think both these teams are going to give Bay Area baseball fans an interesting at least half a season.
Well, there are trends in baseball. As I say, give a plug here for the newsletter and where people can sign up for it, because I love reading it. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. It's you can go to joesheehan.com. It's an email newsletter. It's going into its 13th year. Before newsletters were really a thing, I was doing this. And I just write about baseball. Some days it's analysis, some days it's commentary, some days it's, hey, this is what I happen to see in a game. You can check out the information at joesheehan.com. You can read excerpts of different newsletters. I've got some full samples up there. I think the last one was on Albert Pujols. And you get subscription information there as well. It is a subscription product. You can see the pricing information there. As well, you can check me out at RotoWire, where I'm doing some occasional work for them at rotowire.com, and on the Twitter feed at Joe_Sheehan.
All right, I love it. All right, trends in baseball, though, and Leonard Koppett, the great Baseball Hall of Fame writer, always told me, don't get too excited in April. You need a whole season to see where things are going. Well, in baseball, we know where it's going. The batting average is going down again, one of the lowest averages in a century that we're dealing with now, at least the beginning of April. Where is baseball heading here? Strikeouts, walks, batting average, where are we going here?
Yeah, I'm with Leonard. I tend to spend a lot of my time in April trying to talk people off the wall. But what we're seeing in April is a continuation of a trend that's been going for about 6 or 7 years now. You talk about strikeout rates are driving batting averages down. Strikeout rates have continued to go up. Strikeout rates, about 2 years ago, strikeouts became more common than hits. And that's where we are now. Strikeouts are about 25% of plate appearances. The league batting average is 232. It's the lowest monthly batting average in any month since 1968. It's one of the lowest in baseball history, even including the various dead ball eras. That strikeout rate, it's also because they altered the baseball this year so that it wouldn't fly as far. They've said in the past they haven't intentionally altered the baseball. MLB came out this winter and said, no, we're going to try to make the baseball less bouncy. Well, they've succeeded, but they've taken a lot of runs out of the game. So now what we have, Marty, is kind of a 1968-ish type environment, but instead of a lot of sacrificing and hit and runs and stolen bases, which you still had then, you just have a very stagnant environment where people are waiting around for the home run and not getting it. So I think baseball's got a problem here where you could be looking at a summer of soccer scores with all of the things we didn't like about baseball over the last couple of years and then taking home runs out of the equation.
Bill Lasky joins us. Bill, you and I have kicked this around, and I'll throw it to you first and then to Joe. What can we do? Now, you're a former pitcher. You don't like hitters anyway, but we got to put a couple more runs back in the game.
Hey, Marty, add umpires in there too, all right? Because umpires are
How about the guy last night? Come on.
Big question mark on some umpiring last night, definitely. But let me answer that. Good afternoon, Joe. Pleasure to meet you too. I just think what's happening with the pitchers, I think they're all stuck with this velocity, looking up at the gun, trying to get to 99, 100, and 101. And I think the method of pitching is gone. It's not about working counts and working different pitches. Everything is fastball oriented, and look at the, you're talking about strikeouts. Look how much walks are going on too, Joe. Touch base a little bit of how the walks are starting, the numbers are climbing also.
They have, as pitchers are trying to control not just the velocity, but the incredible spin and movement that they're getting. Walk rates have ticked up. They're not at all-time highs the way strikeout rates are, but they're as high as they've been in a while. Bill, you make the point about velocity, but it's hard to argue with the strikeout rates, right? Pitchers are getting strikeouts, and that's how they get measured today. Talk about velocity. This is how you become the best pitcher on your youth ball team. This is how you become the ace of your high school team. It's how you become the Friday night starter at Stanford. I don't think we're going to be able to get velocity out of the system. And the other thing is, pitchers are throwing fewer fastballs than ever before. Saras, who I know you've had on the show a number of times, Marty, he's tracked this as well. That the rate of fastballs being thrown is now, we've only been able to track this for about 20 years, but it's now under 50%. Pitchers are throwing sliders. They're throwing all their different breaking pitches that we can't even categorize more than they're throwing fastballs. So it's all kind of part and parcel of individual pitchers being able to close that distance between the mound and home plate. Bill, if you don't mind my asking you, and I remember you as a reliever, mostly as a baseball card, to be honest with you. What did you throw? When you were
Sinker slider. Mostly two seamers.
Yeah.
Mostly two seamers and sliders and an occasional off-speed curveball and a changeup. Changeup all the time, but mostly two seamers. Cross seamer here and there to get the eyes up and account, move it up in the zone. But I was mostly knee high. I didn't walk a lot of guys. Gave up a lot of the base hits between first and second and short and third, but mostly kept the ball on the ground.
Crafty righty. Do you remember your velocity?
88-90 on my sinker. I got as high as 92-93 on cross seams. But that was the old Jugs gun. That was the old Jugs gun, Joe. It's probably 101 now.
I know the guys who calibrated these systems in the ballparks, and they'll tell you that they've tried to calibrate them so that the measurements will be consistent over time. But I do think, your 88 probably was maybe 91 today. Well, the average fastball in Major League Baseball for a starter is 93. That's where you're starting. I remember when Fox first got the baseball contract. Every time a guy threw 95, they'd throw up this little flare, this little graphic thing. But you couldn't do that now because 85% of pitches in a game are guys throwing 95. It's just changed the way the game is played. I'm an advocate of moving back around mound. I think there are other solutions. But we've got to do something about the fact that the distance between the rubber and home plate is just too small for what pitchers can do to it today.
Joe Sheehan with us, of course, as we talk about the newsletter, and it's interesting. Bill, I'm going to bring this up. Joe, I'm going to ask you this question as well. Last night I thought was one of the most exciting games we've seen for Giants games in a couple of years, and it reminded me of a Red Sox-Yankee game. And, Joe, I'll throw it to you. Any resemblance when you look at what's going on now with the top teams? They're grinding it out. We've got a lot of pitches being thrown. The games take forever to get done. Are we getting the epidemic of Yankees, Red Sox throughout baseball?
Well, one way to speed things up is who had the plate last night?
Himura?
Yeah, just have him call every game. Because Melanson nearly hit me with a third strike last night, and I'm 3,000 miles away. No, it's hard because one of the things we've learned in recent years is that catcher framing is a real thing. Catchers do influence umpires. So what you'll see is a pitcher get ahead 0-1 and then just constantly try to keep the ball off the plate, figure either the hitter's going to chase or maybe I can get my catcher to steal a strike. That's dramatically slowed down the game. In addition, you have sign stealing, which of course has been such an issue over the last 3 years. Every single trend in baseball is slowing down the game. Now, the last time games were 2.5 hours on average was 1977. Okay, in 1977, Larry Boa, who is 5'6", 108 pounds, could be an all-star. That guy can't be an all-star anymore. Players are bigger, they're stronger, they throw harder. It takes a little bit longer. Short of saying every pitch above 95 miles an hour is a ball, I'm not sure you can roll the clock back that far. I think the short-term solution, if we're not going to move the mound back, which is a long-term prospect, is to say you can only have 7 pitchers available for tonight's game. So inactivate the 4 starters from the last 4 days. You get 1 starter and 6 relievers. The game goes extra innings. You can add a pitcher for every 2 innings. What that would do is it would force teams to start selecting pitchers for something other than velocity, which I think is what Bill was trying to get at before. Can we start selecting pitchers for something other than go in, throw 15 pitches as hard as you can, and then we'll bring in the next guy? Bring back 2 and 3 inning relievers. Bring back swingmen. Just try to find some way to make it so that not every single pitcher is breathing fire. I think that would help the balance. I propose this.
Joe, one of the things you just said, and I'm really a believer of it, is getting some of these relievers to pitch more in one inning. And some of them, they only throw 3 hitters and they're yanked right out. They're not really pushing them. It's only 1 inning and you're out. 1 inning, you're out. I'm waiting for those bridge guys to kind of go 2 innings. And where's the 3-inning save anymore? They don't have that anymore. And the closer can only go 1 inning. He can't go 1 1/3 or 1 2/3. They're just kind of, to me, it's like a babyish thing to pitchers. They're not pushing them. They're just relying on 3 outs and you're done. Good job. I would like to see more of that integrated into bullpen.
I'm completely there with you. It's one of the most frustrating aspects of today's game where a pitcher comes in, has a 9-pitch inning, and you just don't leave him in there. And that's something that we've invested, I would say the last 15 years, we've turned relievers into that. Even the 2-inning relievers have kind of gone away. And what will happen is a 2-inning reliever will be effective. Think about Josh Hader when he first came up. In the first year and a half, he was with the Brewers. Right. And then eventually they just, we're only going to use you in save situations now. So a pitcher who is successful in the multi-inning role will eventually just be put into the closer role. I had a long conversation earlier this week with a friend of mine, Craig Elston, who does San Diego media. And we were talking about how the only solution that baseball teams have had over the last 30, 40 years now is use the pitchers less. It used to be 300 innings for a starter, then it was 240, then it was 200, now it's 180. For relievers, 120 to 100 to 80 to 60. At some point, there's got to be a floor to that. We have to go back and say, okay, we need to start getting 230 innings from our best starters. We have to be getting 90 innings from our best relievers. There's got to be an end point to this reduce workload, because pitchers are still getting hurt. They're just getting hurt differently than they used to.
Let me ask you this. There's all sorts of measurements in baseball. Is Mike Trout still the best player in baseball? Because he's, again, very much under the radar. What kind of a year is he having?
He's off to a monster season. He actually just had the best month of his career. He's never really had that own the league half like a Barry Bonds has had. Christian Yelich a few years ago, Mookie Betts. He's had great halves, but his greatness is in his consistency. But right now he's hitting over 400, over 500 on base. He was leading the league in homers for a couple of days. He's not anymore. He's just doing everything. And it would be great. I think it would be great for baseball if Mike Trout finally had a year where we didn't have to explain to people why Mike Trout is so great. The Angels still might not make the playoffs. But for Mike Trout to have that one signature season that stands out, that turns him into the story in a sport right now that does have a lot of truly great players. Ronald Acuna Jr., Shohei Ohtani, his teammate, off to a great start. I would love to see Mike Trout have that one signature year where he hits 360 and hits 45 home runs and wins a unanimous MVP. Well, he's done that before. Nobody's cared. But Trout, to me, is still the best player in baseball. I think by next year, maybe you start looking at Tatis. You start looking at Juan Soto. You start looking at Ronald Acuna. Trout's going to be 30 this year. He'll be 31 next year. At some point, everybody falls off. Almost everybody, Marty, not you. Almost everybody falls off the pedestal.
Hey, but, Joe, let me throw you another player that I really would like to hear your comments on is Buster Posey, and he has just been smashing the ball, going to right field, right center, is patting, and then he pulls the ball. When you're analyzing Buster Posey so far this year, what are you seeing?
Maybe it's good for everybody to get a year off. I don't mean that to be flip, but how much of what we're seeing is Buster Posey not having spent a year catching 900 to 1,000 innings, playing another 300 innings at first base, not doing all the travel. I don't want to say that 2020 wasn't stressful for even guys who didn't play, but it wasn't the wear and tear on his body. And I really think a lot of what we're seeing Posey is probably the healthiest he's been since 2014. And I love it. I mean, Buster Posey, one of the signature players of his era, and because he kind of went into an early decline, had some injuries, obviously didn't play last year, I think he's lost a little cachet with guys like me. We kind of forgot about him a little bit. So I love when a guy like that comes back and has the big year. If the Giants are going to do anything this year, he's going to have to keep that up. When you have a catcher with his defensive skills who hits like that, I mean, that is a huge competitive advantage over everybody. Yeah. So yeah. I know I'm not supposed to root him or right or whatever have you. I'm rooting for Buster Posey to keep this up.
Joe Sheehan with us. Joe, as we wrap it up, we love having you on, and it's always a pleasure. The newsletter is fabulous. There are some surprise teams. It's only a month of baseball. It seems like it's 3 months already. It's been so intense. But you got the Red Sox. You're looking at Kansas City. You're looking, maybe in the East, how bad the Braves have been. Then you look at the West with the Giants, and now Arizona's back in. Of all these surprise teams, which do you think can stay in this thing?
I circle back to the wisdom of Leonard Coppett. It's May 1st, but I'm looking at the Royals, and not as much that the Royals are a great team, but the rest of that division has really looked very flawed. The Twins, of course, have had a terrible start to the season. They had a COVID issue, but injuries outside of that. The White Sox have had some injury issues. Tony La Russa has made a lot of mistakes on a day-to-day basis that have chipped away at the Sox's performance so far this year. So if that division only needs 84, 85 wins, which could possibly happen, I think the Royals can absolutely get there. I had them as a 500 team at the start of the year. I didn't project Danny Duffy to turn into the pitching version of Joe Hardy out there, but he's off to a great start. The bullpen's been very good, and quietly, Mike Mancini is a much better game manager than he was in St. Louis. So it's a lot of little things making them better.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll catch up with you in a little while and see where this whole thing is going. Danny Duffy, a big winner. They were winning 9-0 the last time I looked today for Kansas City. Joe, a pleasure having you on. Have you enjoyed the first month? Let me ask you that. I know you dig deep into the numbers and everything else. Have you enjoyed the first month?
I love it. I mean, I'm a regular season baseball fan. I like the day-to-day, the 15 games a day, the storylines that develop. I'm frustrated by some of the dominance of strikeouts, but other than that, it's great having baseball back.
Oh, wonderful.
Joe, pleasure to meet you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Marty. Have a good day.
All right, that is Joe Sheehan. Boy, Bill, I love having him on.
He's got good stuff. I love listening to stuff like that, especially when he's comparing players, Trout, and that's why I had to say, well, hey, we got a Mike Trout on our team called Buster Posey right now. That's why it was interesting to hear what he had to say.
Well, he wanted to hear about your career. I think he's going to probably have you compared
he's going to analyze me, Marty.
Yeah,
That's
he's
going
to have you being compared to Mark Melancon next.
Oh, no. I wish I got the strike zone Mark Melancon got last night. Wow.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, wasn't that something?
That was bad. That was
Dave
bad.
said it on
Flores,
the show.
all he did was just say, hey, that ball's outside, and the next two were even farther out, and he just looked at him and said, what are you going to say now? And that's not right. That's just not right.
Well, I'll tell you, Dave said it on the Wrap last night, and, not to take anything away from Melancon, but we never saw that.
No.
We never saw that in all the time that he was here as a Giant.
3 years we never saw the consistency, and we never saw that knuckle curve and the cutter that he's shaving the corners with. He has been dynamic in a Padre uniform. He was good with Atlanta. I don't know why Atlanta didn't keep him. That surprised me.
Well, probably I guess they've got Will Smith in there. Maybe the money. Who knows
that
what?
Could be it too.
But boy, interesting. Posey is just on fire.
Whew.
And what do you think of the rough foul ball home run last night?
You know, at first I thought it curled around the pole, but of course we're watching it on television. We don't have all the angles, and even Kipe thought it curled around the pole. But then when the replay came, I was just like, goodness sake, we're talking 6 inches, and if it just nicked the pole, it would have been a grand slam. So that's the other thing fans need to understand. If it hits the foul pole, it is a fair ball. So it was tough. It was just a tough loss. I was bummed out on the 0-2 pitch. As a pitcher and as a pitching coach, that's the pitch that I scream at pitchers about. You got the hitter in the hole 0-2. You don't have to throw a strike for 3 pitches. But he was really aggressive, and he missed. And you saw Posey's expression as soon as he hit it. He knew it was too big to the barrel of the bat, and Profar hit a bullet.
Yeah, it was that changeup, and he put it up in the strike zone, put it on a T form, and Profar didn't miss it. But if you had my new rule, 3 balls, 3 balls is a walk.
I almost brought that up with Joe, Marty.
I did too, but you think I was crazy. But, the truth of the matter is you get what you guys are saying. You get 0-2, 1-2, and the next thing you know, it's 3-2. Mm-hmm. And if you force the pitcher to throw strikes, you'd get more balls in play. That's just my thought on it. So,
and I tell you, look at Darvish, how many close pitches he had when he got ahead. He was nitpicking a little low, a little off the edge, a little on the edge. And I tell you what, for his age and what he can do on the mound, my goodness, he is impressive.
And then when he needed 95, there it was.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
that was a game.
When you look at the speeds that he throws the curveball in the high 70s, and like you said, he throws the fastball at 94 to 96. Look at the tempo between that. Look at the size of the break and the split finger and all the different pitches he throws at different speeds. And it's difficult. You see these hitters miss, and you're like, how come he can't miss? Well, he don't know what he's throwing. I think you said it last time when we were looking at Darvish. He throws like 11 different pitches or something of that magnitude, and it's chaos. And a hitter can't catch timing, and a hitter can't catch that rhythm of what he's going to throw.
Yeah, interesting game. I thought it was like a Red Sox-Yankee game on a Sunday night ESPN. It was compelling, and it went on forever.
It was. And you know what? You look at Tatis and Machado, 0 for 7. So those guys didn't even have a play in this game, and it was still a very good game offensively as well. Defensively, it was just tough. It was a tough play. When you look at La Stella on both those balls, playing so deep and then trying to come in and make that bare hand play, and then the other one he just buggled off the tip of his glove. But that's just a tough play when you're playing short right field and you're coming in to try to catch a slow-rolling ball.
It is. The professor will talk to us about that tomorrow morning.
Great.
About La Stella and where he was positioned. And there's a reason why he plays deep. In that situation, you can't assume that the guy's going to just hit a little dribbler. Unless the game is on the line, then you have to bring him closer.
Yeah.
So the professor will talk about that tomorrow.
Great.
Bill, who do you have coming up next?
Mark Grant's going to join me. Of course, he's the color commentator on their TV side with Don Orsillo, and he's going to join me next on Talking Baseball. And tonight on the postgame show, I had a sit-down conversation with Tony Gwynn Jr. We talked a little bit about Tatis, but we also talked a lot about his dad and some of the analytics that his dad did compared to what's going on today. It is remarkable what Tony Gwynn did back then when you start chipping and looking at analytics with him.
Jesse Agler is going to join us. He's the play-by-play voice on the radio where Tony is the color analyst. And I like listening to Jesse and Tony, and I've listened to him a number of times.
Yeah.
Tony Gwynn Jr. sounds just like his father.
He does, and the same thoughts and the same reactions and same thinking pattern. And a lot of times, he said he sat in a room with his dad and watched videos, and he kept asking his dad, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And he talks about it, and he goes, this is what I'm looking at, son. And then he starts explaining it to him. And he says he was like my professor, and he was my dad, but he just understood the hitting part of the baseball game so much more than anybody else. And he said he had thousands of VHS tapes back then. He'd just keep playing the same one to see a rhythm of a pitcher or what pitch he throws at different times. I said to him, he's way ahead of analytics, and that was in the early 80s, So it was interesting. It's great. Just like you said, it's great talking to Tony Gwynn Jr.
Yeah, you close your eyes and you think Tony – you close your eyes, and it's Tony Gwynn talking. Yeah. It's good. All right, we'll take a break. Bill will come back with Mark Grant. We've got much more coming up. We've got Giants baseball today. It was a good game last night, and I expect, this whole series is going to be the same way. The Sclafani 2-0 with a 150 earned run average, 0.97 whip, and Blake Snell, the World Series hero. Hasn't won a game this year, hasn't lost a game, 392 earned run average, 145 whip. And in 5 starts, has only pitched 20 innings. So lefties, 1 for 16. So you can imagine the lineup that Gabe Kapler is going to put together tonight. He may put himself in there tonight. He may need right-handed hitters. All right, more coming up right here, 104.5 and 680 KMBR, the Sports League.